Good afternoon and welcome to Kempsey Shire Council's public forum for the 14th of August 2023. I remind all people attending this meeting that it is being webcast on YouTube with audio and vision. A recording of the meeting is available on the internet and is required to be available for 12 months. Private recordings, including taking photographs by members of the public gallery, are not allowed. This ruling is to maintain the integrity of the meeting's proceedings. Please ensure all mobile phones and any other devices are on silent mode, please. On behalf of Council, I welcome all people in the public gallery and observing live on the internet to this public forum. I acknowledge that this meeting is on Dungari land. We pay respects to elders past and present. We also welcome any other Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people with us. Attending the public forum are Councillors Scott Butterfield, Councillors Simon Ferguson, Councillor Anthony Patterson, Councillor Kerry Riddington, Councillor Alexandra Wyatt, Councillor Dean Saul and Councillor Kenny Ring. Online we have Councillor Arthur Bain and we're all here. Also attending are Council staff, Mr Craig Milburn, General Manager, Mr Wes Trotter, Director of Utilities, Mr Michael Jackson, Director of Operations and Planning, Mr Steve Mitchell, Director of Corporate and Commercial, Daniel Thorogood, Group Manager, Governance and Information Services, Melanie Peterson is not here, that's tomorrow, sorry, and they're all here. I now call for any conflict of interest declarations from councillors or staff. Councillor Ferguson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in item 10.9, the Touche Road land acquisition.
Thank you. Councillor Anthony Patterson, and Deputy Mayor, I should say.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the number, just declaring a non-pecuniary interest in my notice motion about lifting the levy banks in the town. As I'm a user of the town, I'm a business person in this town as well.
That's 11.2. 11.2, thank you, Councillor.
Yes,
thank you. No, Councillor Saul, please.
That reminds me, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'd like to also put in a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in
11.2.
11.2, please. Business in Smith Street, Kempsey. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'd now ask the General Manager, Mr Craig Milburn, to outline the guidelines for this public forum, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In line with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes to address Council. This time will be strictly enforced by the Chairperson. Speakers at public forums must not digress from the item on the agenda of the Council meeting they have applied to address the Council on. If a speaker digresses to irrelevant matters, the Chairperson is to direct the speaker not to do so. If a speaker fails to observe a direction from the Chairperson, the speaker will no longer be heard. A councillor, including the Chairperson, may, through the Chairperson, ask questions of a speaker following the address at a public forum. Questions to the speaker must be direct, succinct and without argument. Speakers are under no obligation to answer a question put to them in such a way. Answers by the speaker to each question are limited to 1 minute. Speakers at the public forum cannot ask questions of the council, councillors or council staff. The General Manager or their nominee may, with the concurrence of the Chairperson, address the Council for up to 5 minutes in response to an address to the Council at a public forum after the address and any subsequent questions and answers have been finalised. When addressing the councillors, speakers of public forums must comply with this code and other relevant codes, Council's codes, policies and procedures. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the Council's Code of Conduct or making other potentially defamatory comments. If the Chairperson considers that a speaker at a public forum is engaged in the conduct referred to above, the Chairperson may request the person to refrain from inappropriate behaviour and to withdraw and unreservedly apologise for any inappropriate comments. Where the speaker fails to comply with the chairperson's request, the chairperson may immediately require the person to stop speaking. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. We have 6 speakers today. I remind each speaker you are presenting information which may benefit councillors in becoming better informed on particular decisions they have to make at the council meeting tomorrow. You may not ask questions of the councillors. Our first 2 speakers will be coming in by audio-visual link, and our first speaker is Lara Kennedy. She's speaking for the recommendation 10.1, Rise DA multi-dwelling housing, neighbourhood shops and food and drink premises. And yes, we can see you, you're online. You'll get a 1-minute notice, Lara, when you're getting close to the end of your 5 minutes, and at 5 minutes I will have to ask you to stop speaking. Lara, when you're ready, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I just, I guess, would like to start off by saying thank you to all of the council workers and councillors that have put in a lot of sort of effort and time into this development to date. I'm speaking on behalf of Voices of Southwest Rocks community, and we've obviously been quite invested in the Rise development. And as we all know, the site has now been cleared. So a lot of what we were advocating has sort of been clear felled. And this latest development application is the least invasive version that we have seen. But there are a few things that we are still concerned about that I would like to raise today. The first is acid sulfate soils and water testing. So we know that there's a very, very high likelihood that there are acid sulfate soils on that site, and that when those soils are disturbed, that they can have a negative impact on Saltwater Creek. We ask potentially that council will do regular monitoring of Saltwater Creek and share those results with the community, and obviously take any sort of action that needs to be taken. The next concern we have is around height limits. We recognise that a height limit has been placed on the site in the structure plan, and we are very, very appreciative of that. However, we are still concerned that future stages of the Rise development will push for a height limit increase. And so I just want to reiterate that we really feel like that, above that is not in keeping with the village charm of Southwest Rocks and not what the community wants. So if that happens in future stages, we will continue to push back on developments that have, are higher than 3 stories in Southwest Rocks. The other thing we are concerned about is that we don't feel there was adequate consultation with the fig tree mob, local Dungutty fig tree mob. And we have mentioned this previously, both to the developer and I know to councillors. We really would like to see more meaningful and thorough consultation undertaken with the fig tree mob. And then compliance is the next thing that we would like to flag. We think that compliance is going to be a really important part of this project, and Voices of Southwest Rocks community would really like to work with the council to ensure that the development remains compliant and that any reports of non-compliance are reported and addressed in the most effective manner. So if there are ways that you would like us to do that, please let us know and we will work with you. Those are the concerns that we have regarding the development and any future stages. I also would like to very quickly update you on some of the work we've been doing around zombie developments in general, which came from this site, in that we have a paper petition that is going to be tabled in the New South Wales Legislative Council in 2 weeks that has over 1,000 signatures from Kempsey Shire residents and visitors to Southwest Rocks. who are asking for action on these zombie developments or developments that are based on outdated planning policy, so that we don't have these situations where a site can be cleared based on old development approvals. So we are joining forces with a number of other New South Wales coastal towns.
1 minute to
go in a delegation to New South Wales Parliament on the 24th of August, where we will have a chance to present what has happened in South West Rocks and speak to MPs on the issues that we have been facing in relation to zombie developments. So we're very excited about that and have had the sort of backing of a lot of visitors and locals. So in conclusion, I guess while we are beyond sad of the clearing of the Rise site on Phillip Drive, and we do continue to oppose any construction on that site that will negatively impact the threatened species or the sensitive coastal wetland and coastal village charm of South West Rocks, we understand that this DA is compliant with ZEP and, support council in the decision they have to make.
Thank you very much, Lara. Thank you for your presentation. You were slightly off topic when you mentioned the petition, but it was kind of connected, so I'll let you continue.
Thanks for letting me slide.
We're now going to ask any council if they have a question for you, and I remind you again that any question that is put to you, you do not have to answer if you don't want to, and you'll have 1 minute to answer any question. Councillor Whittington, please.
Thank you, Lara. Another excellent presentation. And I really thank the voices and everybody who contributed to this. My thoughts are, and a question for you, in your travels around the town, have you been talking to anyone with concerns about traffic and dust with the construction?
Yes, we have had a lot of residents concerned about that. I think particularly, following the construction of Lamanda Straws and some of the impact that had on Phillip Drive and the roadworks that had to be done, I think a lot of people are expecting that again. I do know people in the immediate vicinity are very concerned about the noise. They're concerned about their loss of privacy and, what that's going to mean for their lifestyle and their comfort of living. And I know that people are a little bit worried about the walking path and the cycle path and if there's going to be, obstructions and damage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lara.
Do you have any further questions? I would like to ask you a question, Lara, if I may. You said you feel that compliance is something your members will be able to help with and talk to council. How would you envisage that working?
Well, I think we've seen a lot of developments in South West Rocks where there has been compliance issues, and it's been really hard to figure out exactly who we're supposed to be reporting that to. So, do we report to council? Do we report to the EPA? Who is responsible? So I think just knowing if we see something or if something's happening, who does it need to be reported to so that it can be addressed? Because I can imagine from council's perspective and developers' perspective, the quicker that these things can be fixed up, the better for everyone.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Wyatt, please.
Yes, please. Hey, Lara, you mentioned the South Voices of South West Rocks want more consultation with the Fig Tree mob. Do you know what what does that look like?
I mean, I think I don't know that I can answer that because I actually think that needs to come from Fig Tree, but I know that often the level of consulting that is done can feel like it's ticking a box. So it doesn't necessarily feel like genuine consultation. It feels like we got the cultural heritage assessment, we did a site visit, and we're good now. And I would love to see and I, like maybe that's great, that's the bare minimum, but I would love to see developments going above and beyond that to do actual meaningful consultation.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great answer. Generally speaking, the Southwest Rocks Fig Tree Corporation have expressed that wish to you. That's a question. Generally speaking, the Fig Tree mob have expressed that wish to Voices of Southwest Rocks that they require more consultation.
Once again, I don't want to speak on behalf of Fig Tree mob, so I'm definitely not doing that, but I do believe that the level of consultation hasn't been to the desired level.
Thank you, Lara. There are no further questions. So again, I thank you for your presentation today, and councillors will consider what you've said in our decision tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, Lara.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is online as well. It's Daniel Pajonka, and he's speaking in favour of the RISE DA, multi-dwelling housing, neighbourhood shops and food and drink premises. Can't see him. He's there somewhere. Here he comes.
Sorry, Morris.
Technology at work.
G'day,
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, g'day, councillor.
You have 5 minutes, and you're free to go when you're ready, and we'll ask some questions afterwards, possibly. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, councillors and Lara and the planning assessment team for all the hard work up until today. Apologies, my reception may drop out. So if it does, just please carry on. But yeah, so just wanted to speak today just to answer any questions raised from councillors or Lara. So I noted a couple of questions around the acid sulfates. There is an extensive monitoring plan with acid sulfate testing through the duration of construction. We know that there is some acid sulfates. We don't intend on really affecting them too much on site because they are quite deep, but there is a rigorous system, and acid sulfate construction management is a pretty widely and common process during construction these days. It's not really an unknown product, and the testing regimes and equipment and the knowledge is pretty thorough these days. So we don't expect there to be any issues. We're not bulk earthworking massive basements and removing copious amounts of it, or if any. So I'm sure that's an easy monitoring process for council and our consultants, our local consultants there. The other comment raised about the heights and the zoning, obviously our DA, it's compliant heights, the zoning does call for additional permitted uses, food, beverage, tourism and the likes. So with this DA, we did hold a number of pre-DAs with council about the design and the process and what we came up with, and we ask in future stages of the DA that we could hold these meaningful and documented pre-DAs with council so we could discuss our plans and what council want as well, and we can have that feedback back in writing, so we're all sort of on the same page instead of coming into disputes during a DA. So I think that would be a helpful process. That would be much appreciated. In regards to the Aboriginal consultation, we did do consultation with a number of Aboriginal groups in the local area. Dunghutti was one of them. Post this as well, it was referred to from one of the groups to the state government. I don't know the actual department, but it was the overarching state government Aboriginal department for a cease and desist order type of thing. So that was rejected from the state government. So it has gone through and sort of been reviewed by a lot of departments, a lot of consultants, and in all future DAs, and we're happy to sort of discuss and consult as well at any time. With the construction and dust management through the duration of the project, you understand that Phillip Drive is pretty, it's fairly poor condition especially at the front of our site. So that doesn't sort of help with a lot of the dust control, but hopefully with the contributions and the rework from our site, which requires us to do a lot of work and upgrades along Phillip Drive as well, that will, in the long term, said a lot of things. So there, within our construction management plan and environmental management plan, there is a lot of conditions and requirements around dust control, truck number management, road maintenance, all that sort of stuff as well. So we generally always comply with them because it's just a lot easier to comply than not comply. And I'm sure that'll be something, closely watched over by council as well. So, and our contractors too. So I'd like to say that there won't be any issues. But it's a very well monitored sort of process as well. It's just
1 minute to go.
Yep. And then in compliance, to the duration of the project, we haven't done a lot of work on site, but the work that we have done on site, we ended up having like a bombardment of phone calls. And I believe the same has happened with council and Safe Work. So, regarding compliance as well, for us, it's a lot easier just to receive a phone call and a phone call or a complaint or an email from, from the residents. And when we do action them straight away. And I'm sure this is the same with council and Safe Work. So what we have found with this job is that instead there's just been sort of like call centres sent up where Safe Work or council just gets a bombardment of phone calls and emails, and contact details shared, which has made it quite difficult to manage and properly process all the inquiries. So in the future, it'd be good to sort of just deal with
that's your time, Daniel. That's your time. Your 5 minutes is up. If we could ask you some questions now, please. Councillor White has the first question.
Hi, I'm not sure if you can see us, but we've lost you on the screen, which is fine because you've probably got.
Sorry.
That's no worries. You've probably got short bandwidth. I just wanted to ask a question about the Aboriginal heritage. So the conditions of the consent require an Aboriginal heritage field officer to be appointed on site during construction, and through contact with councillors and the community, you've definitely indicated a willingness to work with the community, and you've even mentioned that here at the moment. Have you appointed an Aboriginal heritage officer? And I've not checked this question with anyone, but the second part of the question is, can you commit to employing 1 to 2 people, because there are gender issues with Aboriginal heritage, from the community at South West Rocks, those being the traditional owners of that land? Or can you consider it?
We will consider it. If you'd want to maybe put it through in an email through the planning team, we'd have to consult with our consultants as well, our Aboriginal heritage consultants, on the process required with it. I know that there were some amendments made recently. I think best, sort of we consult with them, but definitely the first instance, I'll set up a meeting with our heritage consultant and your planning team and discuss that sort of process. Yeah,
thanks for that. That's probably a better answer, a bit more diplomatic. But if you can, as mentioned in the previous speaker, if you can commit to at least having a conversation with the Fig Tree mob at South West Rocks to determine whether they actually want to be appointed as the Aboriginal Heritage Field Officers, and also noting that Aboriginal Heritage is gender-based, so you may need to employ a male and a female. Thank you.
Yep, okay. Yep. No, definitely can.
Thank you for those questions, Councillor White. Any further questions? If I could ask you a question, Daniel, it's Leo Horville. I would like to know, with your future plans, if this DA is approved tomorrow, when would you hope to commence work, and do you have a time frame for when it would be completed?
We would like to start sort of construction pretty soon. It's sort of long overdue for us with this project. We'd be aiming to start in the coming months, if not early next year. Just sort of depends on different approvals and designs and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure you can appreciate. And then finish time, I think the subdivision works, they're sort of expecting about 6 months for all the subdivisions and the roads and everything, and then sort of townhouses above that, beyond that, which is probably a fair bit less intrusive with truck movements, potentially.
You're still there, Daniel? Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Did you hear that or?
I can hear you now. Didn't hear that last
sorry.
bit about the construction
okay,
of the townhouses.
Yeah, so the construction of the townhouse is probably about 12 months as well, but with that, it's sort of a bit less intrusive on, with earthworks and dust control and sort of environmental protection measures and all, things like that. So, probably allow 6 months, then potentially another 12 months past that.
Thank you very much. There are no other councillors wishing to ask you a question, so thank you very much for your presentation this evening, Daniel.
Not a worry, thank you.
Our third speaker today is Ken Scotton. He is speaking against 10.2 Crescent Head Holiday Park Revised Concept Plan. He's a frequent flyer as a speaker. He was here last month. So, Ken, you've got 5 minutes and you'll practice at this when you're ready.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks for allowing me to speak this afternoon before council. I'm actually talking on 10.2 item 2. Started now. No public consultation. There was concern in the community following the lack of public consultation related to the initial construction of the holiday park maintenance shed. KSC released an apology stating that they would do better in future. However, here we are once again finding ourselves in the tail end of a design brief that failed during its creation to seek any level of public consultation. KSC's press release to relocate the shed created a general sigh of relief in the community that the shed would be moved well away and the original pathway be reinstated to its former location. However, the latest design falls far short of these expectations and carries with it a number of issues that will impact further on Crescent Head Village. The issues as follows were noted during the recent meeting of the Crescent Head Resident Ratepayers Association, who voted unanimously to reject item 2. The shed was not being removed from the scenic vista of Creek Bridge and Beach, but has shifted marginally sideways and will be clearly visible from both Reserve Road and the village centre. The new location will require modifications to the existing shed and excavation back into the hillock area behind to make the shed fit into the space. A retaining wall is required that will necessitate the removal of at least one or more healthy paperbark trees and other greenery in the area. As a result, the shed will still be clearly visible from the surrounding street views, and moving it sideways will do nothing to remove this eyesore from the village environment. It is proposed to retain the existing concrete slab, however, there's no explanation to what purpose this slab will serve. Perhaps a home for the smelly, unsightly garbage bins again, even though the slab would be excessively large for that purpose. The fence required because of the drop of the retaining walls creates what is shown in the drawing as green space. It's confusing why a Crown Land Park needs a green space, but perhaps the designer couldn't arrive at any better solution. The design of the new pathway is inadequate. The point of entry exit at the conjunction of the Reserve Road footpath that is 1.8 metres wide will create a choke point that has huge safety ramifications for the young, old and disabled, and fails to cater for the type and quantity of foot traffic that uses both pathways during holiday periods. In short, it'll be a disaster waiting to happen. The width of the proposed pathway also demonstrates a misunderstanding of varied traffic flow along that area. The entry-exit point onto the road in the holiday park is directly into a stormwater drain grate and dish drain gutter depression. Where's the consideration for equity of access in this design? It should also be recognised that this pathway is not solely for the use of non-holiday park residents, but provides the only close, safe pathway to the village, shops, clubs and tavern for guests in that section of the holiday park. This area has been designed to create, the arse end of the holiday park, directly adjacent to the front end of Crescent Head Village, and can be likened to placing a loading dock at the front of a Westfield shopping centre. If this was a private development proposed under a DA, then any reasonable council would reject it out of hand. It is apparent the only defining criteria in the design brief is to maximise the final financial return to both KSC and APTM at the expense of Crescent Head Village. It's also apparent the design criteria was created by an accountant, not a town planner, and should be embarrassing to one and all. Financial compensation. that APTM is seeking some type of fiscal compensation as a result of the relocation of the shed should be a professional embarrassment to them, and I would explain why in detail if I had more than 5 minutes to talk.
1 minute to go.
Question to be asked is, when was APTM given the planning power to decide what happens in Crescent Head? This entire fiasco started when they built the shed. The fault doesn't lie with the residents of Crescent Head who objected to it, and they should not be held as morally liable for compensation or scapegoats in this fiasco. Be aware, item 2 is not a proposal but a final draft for approval by councillors' votes at Tuesday's meeting. Don't be fooled into thinking there will be public consultation on item 2. It has been lost in a sea of fluff in 10.2 to disguise it. And transparency. It appears that a forensic examination of the business paper is required to define council intention. Details should be concise and easy to understand unless there's something to hide. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr. Scotton, please?
I'll go.
Councillor White.
I'll go there. Do you have has the community or the Crescent Head residents and ratepayers, have you thought about where it should go?
Well, we've had a look. Excuse me, just a sec. We've had a look down in that area, and there are a couple of other sites that are better suited to losing this shed in the park. Sites 106 and 107 would be perfect for that, which is just along the road. It's down behind the cliff. It's a better access off the roadway for entry into the shed, and it's two camp spots there opposed to the two that they gained back in 101 and 102 where they were going to place the shed. There's basically more room there.
Sorry, just another going there question. The community consultation have been raised. What type of community consultation do you think the Crescent Head ratepayers and the community, because it's not just ratepayers out there, residents and ratepayers, what type of consultation would that community be happy with if you're able to make a subjective comment on that?
Under the community engagement policy, I think it fairly well defines what sort of consultation should be carried out. This latest proposal and item 2, there is no consultation, so we've no chance to engage with council. We're now on the defensive again. As much as we would like to enjoy our time at Crescent Head and not be involved in fighting about a tin shed in a caravan park.
Thank you. Another question from Councillor Riddington, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott, and I really appreciate your presentation. So when we're talking about the shed and we're talking about the pathway, would you please explain to me again the reasoning that you put behind reinstating the path to where it was prior?
Yeah, microphone. Yeah, thanks.
The path initially, as we all know, had been there for a number of years, and it provided a straight means of access with good, clear vision for people using it to get into the path. To start to move that around now and create other issues there's no explanation for it why that should happen. As we know, the shed probably should not have been there in the first place. Over the years, the garbage bins were put on either side of the path. People could probably live with that. There were no avenues to complain. I think the people just want, for the old and infirm, the disabled, for the young families, for everybody that uses that path, they need a nice, wide, clear access with the proper gradients to be able to get down into the road, into the caravan park, and utilise the path that they've used there for 75 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Ken, I'd like to, if you could explain a bit further, you have a suggested better placement in that there will be, you're saying there's no need for a retaining wall at the other location you mentioned.
No, there isn't. It can go straight in there. The shed doesn't have to be modified. I think, look, reading that plan, it looks to me as though the front awning on the shed has to be shortened to get it into the space, to squeeze it in between the road and the earthen bank behind it. in its new location, which is deeper, it's flatter. It's basically you can put the shed straight in there, put a slab in there, drop it straight on. There's no need for any excavation, removal of any trees. It's closer to the road level. So access will be a lot better. And as I say, you're taking two spots there and just changing the two places. That's basically what you're doing with it.
Well, I don't know whether your engineering background at all there, but would it be more expensive to move the shed from where it is to the proposed site or to the site you propose?
Well, there's no earthworks required in the location not that we're proposing, that is suggested, the 106, 107. It's a flat, even ground with plenty of room behind it. There's plenty of room either side of it. It seems to be a better alternative to have to go back in, to cut back into the wall behind it, into the hillock behind it, and then that creates an issue where you put a retaining wall and then you've got to protect behind the retaining wall so nobody from the public falls down it. That was why I think the fence was put on there and the green area was created to stop people walking down and potentially falling over the top of the retaining wall down behind the shed and the we don't know what the existing concrete slab is to be used for. We can only assume it's for the garbage bins. Now, that's a very big slab to put garbage bins on, and we've looked at that as well. And even if that was reduced by 2/3 of the depth from the rear, it would still have plenty of room to accommodate the garbage bins. That would then mean that with the gradient, it would mean that the retaining wall would be lower and you wouldn't need a fence behind it. We'd still see it, we'd still smell it. It'd still be a welcome to Crescent Head, 4.5 cubic metre garbage bins, but is it a better alternative than the shed being in either of those locations? Yes, it is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. Do we have any further questions from any councillors? If not, I thank you for your presentation this evening.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Mr. Noel Selby from South West Rocks. He's going to be speaking against 10.3 Macleay Valley Adventure Park update. Mr. Selby, your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Firstly, let me thank Council for letting me speak on this subject. If there is no further funding from state and federal government, the project should be abandoned. Forget it. The major problem I have with this is that the economics of the whole project will end up being a burden on the ratepayers of Kempsey Shire through the depreciation of the project in coming years. Council will have to find approximately, and this is just approximate, $220,000 a year to fund it, the depreciation, and that's on 11 million at 2%, 11.2 at 2%. Money which could be better spent looking after infrastructure throughout the Shire. It's been said that the park will possibly attract state, national and international events, thus bringing tourist revenue into Kempsey. The problem with this is that Kempsey doesn't have the type of accommodation that these competitors will be looking for, thus forcing them to look at either staying in Coffs Harbour or Port Macquarie. How will this benefit KSC? The reason I say this is that I've had experience with World Water Ski Racing Championships over the years, and I'm sorry, but Kempsey motels just aren't up to the standard required to hold such events in Kempsey Shire. And dorm-style accommodation, which has been mentioned, doesn't cut the mustard either for these people that would be competing in national events and international. If more funding from state and federal government don't come to fruition and the project has to be downsized, will the project be worth the investment and the upkeep that ratepayers will have to put through more rate increases maybe? I think that will be a hard sell to the people of Kempsey. As for locals using the skydiving facilities at $400 a throw, I'm more than certain that not too many of them will take skydiving up. And as far as I know, tourists aren't going to come to Kempsey just to go skydiving when they come here for the wonderful beaches that the Shire has. Also, when I got in contact, this is an interesting part, the Australian Parachute Federation to ask for numbers of competitors that participated in the last Australian Skydiving Championships, I was told that the figures were in confidence. I'm asking for numbers. I'm not asking for names and addresses. So how is this, if we can't get information out of them now on numbers, how the hell is this going to help our economy in Kempsey? Also, why do we need a pump track out there if it goes ahead when we have a pump track out at West Kempsey that council's just spent money on, you know? If we truly want to boost tourism through this project, why wouldn't it have been put out at one of the tourist centres, out at Southwest Rocks or at Crescent Head? That's it. That's all I've got.
Thank you, thank you, Noel. Do we have any questions for Noel, please, councillors? Thank you, Noel. We don't have any questions this time, but the General Manager has a couple of comments on your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments for clarity for the public. The council report makes it very clear in relation to the pump track that given the situation, the pump track shouldn't proceed anyway. That's actually contained in the report. We're actually working with the department on potentially using those funds in other areas. In relation to accommodation, in the development stage of this, we actually had the Australian Parachute Federation have been heavily involved. Their coach actually came down. They did quite a significant reconnaissance of the whole area and quite satisfied with the accommodation provided across the Shire in relation to future events that could actually be held here. So that is something directly from the coach actually coming on site and checking out the whole of the area. They also commented on the other things, because obviously not just skydiving, but the other attractions of the valley was something that was very, very attractive to them. So there's just a couple of points for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Our fifth speaker this evening is Adam Ulrich. He's speaking for the 10.3 Macleay Valley Adventure Park update. Yes, and Mr. Ulrich, you have 5 minutes.
Hi everyone, thanks for your time. I'm President of the Save Kempsey Airport Action Group and here today to speak to item 10.3 in support of recommendations 1 to 3 and against recommendation 4 of the report. I'm here to support Council to pursue Mr Milburn's statement that Council does have the option to terminate the funding agreement now if it so chooses, and it should occur as this is an extravagant and blatant waste of taxpayers' money. The history of support from previous councils is irrelevant. You have the opportunity to make your own responsible decision. It is obvious that the whole community were not made fully aware of the implications this project would have on council finances and the flow-on effects that us as ratepayers will ultimately inherit by pursuing this white elephant project. The flaws are many and varied, including 1, reduced scope of the project. Now the scope of the project has changed. Viability is now even in more jeopardy as all the income-producing elements of the project have been deleted. The statements made that this is an injection of $11 million into the economy are laughable. It is only an injection of $11 million of debt onto council's books that ratepayers will be paying back for generations. This doesn't need to be determined by the Department of Regional New South Wales. The opportunity exists right now for council to make its own independent decision as to why we need to waste $11 million on a hangar for skydiving. That is an outrageously expensive facility, and I can guarantee that existing hangars at the airport were a fraction of that cost. Visiting skydiving operators already conduct business out of existing facilities on site, so why pursue this? 2, nil evidence of any type of community engagement in either the DA or the independent assessment report. Remember that half of this Shire burned and there are still members of your community that you represent living in temporary substandard accommodation. Mr Milburn correctly states Kempsey's socio-economic disadvantage, and this translates to being the 6th worst in New South Wales since 2011 census data. Since the DA was launched in 22, remember what has happened regarding cost of living pressures. Skydiving is an expensive sport to participate in. Given all of this, please tell me how our community are even contemplating going skydiving. And yet the proponent did not have the common decency to ask our community if this project was even wanted. Don't even think of hiding behind the statements of public exhibition period and there are only 10 submissions. 9 submissions were against this and only 1 for it. The total disregard by the proponent for its own community engagement strategy is absolutely disgraceful. 3, nil evidence of a business plan. Any statements regarding the benefits that skydiving will bring to this shire can only be viewed as speculation. I repeat, no evidence has been supplied in either the DA or the assessment report to those claims. In fact, the only commentary came from the Australian Parachute Federation, where they state, and I quote, "Don't expect the broader skydiving community to make more than the occasional use of this planned facility," end quote. That is an underwhelming statement from a peak body in this sport and another reason to terminate this project. The committee is only now finding out that if this proceeds, ratepayers will then be exposed to carrying the depreciation costs of this project. Mr. Milburn cannot provide an accurate figure at this point, so would we blindly even contemplate pursuing this and exposing ratepayers to increased rates worth millions of dollars? 4, nil evidence of any feasibility study. Again, any statements made in the report are speculation only. 5, construction in a flood zone. Given what we have observed and experienced regarding floods over the last few years, both here and in the Northern Rivers, this is the most outrageously absurd expectation of this project. The 2022 flood inquiry clearly states that floodplain planning over the last 70 years has led to a rinse and repeat approach to floodplain planning, with too much already built, being built or planned to be built in areas exposed to flood risk. New buildings must be out of harm's way and made more resilient to the impacts of floods and other extreme weather events, end quote. The Northern Rivers Reconstruction Corporation is now tasked with this massive job of undoing generations of planning decisions in the Northern Rivers area. Why would council even consider this site as appropriate for a new council asset? It is beyond ridiculous. In conclusion, this is a white elephant project that is a monument to self-interest for a select few, has underwhelming support from a peak parachuting body, is an extravagant and blatant waste of public money that will expose ratepayers to hefty debts for years to come and should be abandoned immediately. Remember, $11 million can fill a lot of potholes. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Gallery. We now come to any questions from councillors. Could you just reiterate that you've contacted or you've written to the skydiving organisation saying, and you've got a response saying they would only see it as occasional use? What would they give you any numbers on occasional use?
Sorry, let me find the quote. It's actually a direct quote from the independent assessment report that was put to the planning panel via a request from CASA, is my memory of what was included in the planning panel report. And the quote is, when I find it, quote, "Don't expect the broader skydiving community to make more than the occasional use of this planned facility," end quote.
So they didn't actually specify numbers in that?
Nothing.
Adam. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? If there are other questions, I thank you for your presentation this evening. Our final speaker this evening is David Duff, who's going to be speaking against 10.9 Toos Road Crown Road Land Acquisition. And the trick, David, is to get that red light on. You've got to press the button until it happens. There, you've done it. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, General Manager, councillors, council executives and all others in this forum. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. I am David Duff, representing Bamara Homestead. We should have had a... Sorry.
It's about to be put up, David.
A flourishing and distinctive local ecotourism venture that my wife Caroline and I have proudly operated for nearly 2 decades. The proposed development on Toos Road poses a substantial threat to our livelihood and holds the potential to undermine the very essence of our exceptional tourism offering. Considering this, I respectfully request the forum's attention to several key points I wish to present this evening. Firstly, the impacts on Bamara. A mere Google search will reveal a multitude of words used by thousands to describe Bamara. Tranquil, unique, peaceful, and the list goes on. Furthermore, a visit to Bamara's website will yield terms such as secluded, private, beautiful, and scenic, among others. The sweeping views that Bamara proudly boasts have found a place in this council's advertisements, both online and in print. It is worth noting that multiple executive staff members of this esteemed forum have personally savoured the natural beauty that Bamara provides. However, all this stands on the brink of destruction due to the proposed development. The potential temporary through construction and permanent impacts on Bamara are poised to be disastrous for our business. Secondly, impacts on community. Our Upper Macleay community has navigated a series of substantial challenges in recent years, encompassing both environmental and economic trials. It's the unwavering determination of our community that has enabled us to prevail during such trying times. This resilience has been nurtured by fostering tourism, which has established a mutual beneficial connection with other businesses in the Macleay area, including the Bellbrook Hotel and General Store. However, should we allow the destruction of the key tourism accommodation between Kempsey and Armidale, it would significantly impact the entire community. This loss will be monumental considering the careful woven network of our local upriver economy. Furthermore, during its operation, Bamara Homestead has shouldered the responsibility of contributing over $30,000 in donations for cancer research, all the while playing a crucial role in supporting various local community charities. Unfortunately, the imminent aftermath of this development would render the prospect of future contributions unattainable. Thirdly, the lack of consultation. The absence of consultation throughout this entire process has brought me to this moment. During Kempsey Council's August meeting under agenda item 10.9, as well as in May's meeting under 10.1, it is stated, and I quote, residents have been engaged in a variety of ways, including direct communication, end quote.
1 minute to go.
I would like to assert that Kempsey Council has never engaged in direct communication with either Carolyn or myself, despite the substantial list of potential impacts inflicted on our business, which I have just mentioned. This circumstance is deeply disconcerting and disheartening, as though we are not deemed eligible for such engagement. In conclusion, the unparalleled contribution my wife has dedicated to the Macleay hinterland tourism over the past 2 decades stands on the strong foundation of a thriving, community-orientated ecotourism venture. Bamara Homestead. Kempsey Council's strategic plan explicitly states, and I quote, seek to encourage complementary ecotourism and promote job opportunities through nature-based tourism, end quote. However, it is my firm opinion that the consequences of what they aspire to achieve with Toos Road upgrade will regrettably yield the opposite effect in relation to this existing tourism.
Thank you very much, David, for your presentation. David, we may have some questions for you. I know I have 4, and I hope other councillors have been listening or considering your words very carefully. Councillor Wyatt, please.
Yeah, I did have a look at your website and the videos last night, so thank you for that. Just in relation to where the homestead is, I don't know if we can put those photos up. So from the property and the homestead, visitors will see, allegedly, the bridge and the road. Where is the bridge going?
Well, the way I understand it is, I don't know, can we pull the photo up or not? It might be easier for me to explain it. So I understand that the proposal is clearly visible off the deck of Bumurra, straight adjacent on the opposite side of the road.
Thank you. That was actually my one of my questions, David. From your Bumurra homestead, which, as you said, is a iconic tourist destination, what's the nearest the proposed road will be to the homestead across the other side of the river? Have you worked out that distance at all?
I can only estimate that, but it's estimate 150 to 200 metres.
Thank you. That's just to the road. So it'll be a gravel road, I presume. It's a gravel road. So
yeah, I can't answer that. It's all proposal as far
my
as
question would be the distance from your homestead to the proposed site of the bridge. Any idea on that distance?
Well, again, if what I understand, I guess I'll only estimate probably 500 metres.
Okay, thank you. And it's servicing the people on the other side of the river that are being cut off by the two-road landslip. What sort of traffic would you expecting to be going along that road on any day? Because that's the issue, I guess. You can see a grey strip maybe of the road, but
well, most definitely that's our concern, because I mean, if the bridge gives easier access for anybody, it'll be a public road. It's just not for those residents that are affected by the landslip. So once it becomes a public road and it's trafficable, I would imagine that there'd be increased traffic significantly, because you're talking about a beautiful part of the world. So everybody wants to experience it. I guess the residents there, I don't know, council have numbers on that, I suppose, as to what traffic actually uses Toots Road at the moment. But if it's opened up and becomes more accessible for the general public, you'd only expect it to expand.
Yes, yeah.
And that is one of our major concerns.
Right. We don't have particular numbers in mind there, but you're saying it will expand.
I would imagine so.
Okay, thank you. I think you've answered all my questions. We have Councillor Bain, who has a question for you as well, David. He's online.
Yes, thanks, David. And I'm hearing what the concern about the economic impact on your business and other businesses. This is kind of a two-pronged question. One is, how long have you lived in this area, and are you aware of any other possible options that would be feasible in locating an access to those people that are isolated due to the landslip?
Well, the simple answer to the question is yes. Have I been asked about that? The answer to that is no. I've lived in the area all my life, born and raised on the Upper Macleay. We're both, Carolyn and I, are both fourth generation beef cattle operation families. We've got, I classes, we've got a lot of local knowledge. So I don't know, it's a two-part question, Arthur. So the second part of the question, would there be a more suitable spot for the bridge that would not affect Bumurra as much? Most definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, David. And there's it's mentioned in the business papers that there was a meeting and that locals were consulted. Were you present at that May meeting when GHD presented the options and impacted residents were asked to give their opinion?
No. Neither Caroline or myself have been contacted directly by council.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Patterson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for your presentation tonight. Just before I ask my first question, I agree with you. Your place up there.
No, just ask the question, please.
Talking about other options, could you give us a bit more of an idea about possibilities, even crossing the river somewhere else? You know, before that gooseneck, because I'm looking at the map here now. It's a different. This map is the attachment for that would probably be a better map for us all to look at. The attachment on the note, on 10.9, there's an attachment showing Tunnel Road.
There is?
Yeah.
We'll try and get that up for you, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, so that was my question. Looking at other options, are you able to put together a few options for us as council to look at that we could bring into feasibility?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to comment on that, Anthony. I guess that's the whole crust of why I'm actually here today. But I'd have to look at the GHD report if that's the map that.
Could you give me your first option, because then my next question is going to be your second option, okay?
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Could you let me run the meeting? Yeah. Do you have a first and second options, please, David?
It's not on that map.
Yep.
There's other maps that I've seen, and I think that needs to be presented. And there are I understand, again, that there are several other options and a couple of different sites in the close proximity to that. Now, we're talking about land acquisition, aren't we? So I understand from council point of view that the Crown acquisition is a lot easier than private land acquisition. But if we had those other maps up there, Anthony, we'd understand what I'm talking about. And hopefully you've seen them, so you know what I'm talking about. And hopefully the rest of the council does as well. Those other options would not impact on Bumurra as much as this option. And what I'm here about tonight is preserving what we've already got and not destroying it, because that will put car lights straight on our deck and in our lounge room. And if there's increased traffic, if it's a gravel road, there'll be dust issues, there'll be noise issues. I mean, during construction, nobody wants to look off Bumurra deck at an excavator and a bulldozer, as you can appreciate.
Thank you. Yeah, another question, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, Councillor Patterson. Yeah. Now my next question is the possibility of this being not agreed to. Possibility of it not being agreed to. What would you think your time frame would be to get those options back to council?
You don't have to answer questions that are beyond your knowledge.
Ultimately, yeah. Yeah.
That's my take on it, Anthony. It's not my job. I mean, you guys are the councillors. Mm-hmm. We're ratepayers.
Yeah.
We're operating a business.
Yeah.
In this shire, a significant, pristine business for 2 decades, and this proposed development looks to destroy that. So what we're trying to do is avoid it. Now, I'm disappointed that I've had to come here today when we've gone as far as what we have with the proposals. However, I am willing to advise council, if they wish, in some other alternatives, but I need to have the reports, all reports, because I haven't seen them.
Okay. Thank you, David. Do you have another question, Councillor Patterson?
I just have a follow-up question. My question to you is, would you think you'd like to explain to, and the reason why I'm asking this question, would you like to explain to us as councillors, rather than council, about this matter? Because you being a local, knowing the area.
Most definitely.
Thank you. Councillor White, please.
It's just a procedural question. I just wanted some clarification on the development approval. Am I allowed to ask that here or not?
No, we're just asking questions of the presenter, David, at the moment. If you have questions, we'll be having discussions council-wide in the briefing on this item. And there's a lot of questions we should ask then. But we've got to thank you, David.
Well, then
Do you have another question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how to reword the question, of how to word it into a question. This is just a yes and no question, but are you aware that there may be development approval that is not within council scope? And I'm going to seek clarification on that tomorrow. So this may or may not be development approval of council. It may be state government.
Am I aware of that?
Yeah.
I have heard whispers.
Okay. I will be seeking clarification on that later.
I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, me either.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bain has another question, David. He's online.
Thanks, Alan.
Just looking at the position of the bridge on that curve in the Macleay River, and with your understanding of flooding, what do you, as a lay person, but a local with local knowledge, what would you see as are there any potential problems of placing a bridge at that position?
Yes. The proposed site that I've seen on that map that was up there earlier is one of the fastest flowing parts of the Macleay. I'm no bridge building technician, and I know bridge building's come a long way in the last 20 or 30 years, but that's a very, very fast flowing part of the Macleay River. You can see by the bend there and the bluff escarpment to the north of it. The other question that I have, Arthur, if I may answer in a slightly different way, is I'm concerned that the proposed road on that Crown Road may actually be in flood reach. So I ask, why would we build a road out of gravel in flood reach of the Macleay River in one of the most fastest flowing parts of the river system? So I hope that answers your question, Arthur.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for your time.
Any further questions, councillors? If not, David, I thank you for your presentation this evening, and to the other speakers as well. Councillors will now consider all the information you've presented, and hopefully we can make the right decisions tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
We're adjourning the meeting now, and we'll come back as a briefing, councillors, in about 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone in the public gallery, for being here this evening. Thank you.